Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. We got a lot to get into, some draft talk in the NFL Draft and the Bengals. The Reds coming back from the dead to get back over 500. We got college basketball transfer portal. But, Rick, I got to ask you, did you watch the Masters final round on Sunday?
I did. I was kind of in and out. We were at the in-laws, so I was kind of taking care of the kid while they were all watching it. We were going inside and outside, but I saw most of it, and incredible drama, obviously. Did you win some nice change there with your pick?
I did, and I'll tell you the story. So I was doing public address for the Reds Futures High School Showcase. They had 3 softball games at Mason High School, and the last one was ending at about 6:30, and the kid who was running the event had the tournament on his phone. So we watched the final. We got wrapped up with our last game. I said, you know what, let's just watch the final hole here if you don't mind. He goes, yeah. He goes, so we watch it. And I'm just thinking it's a formality where he's going to make the putt and win it and all that. And he misses it. I'm like, oh my God, how did you miss? I'm like, well, I can't sit around here. I'll just draw. I'll put it on my phone, put it on my car seat next to me, and I'll just listen to the playoff. And I'm tooling down the road. I'm not quite to the interstate. They're got ready to tee off. I'm like, nope. And I veer into a gas station real quick. So I watched the playoff hole at a gas station by I-71, and it was riveting. I'm glad I stopped to watch because it was well worth it.
Yeah. One of those sports moments that transcends like which sport you like or watch. It's just one of those things that everyone can relate to and enjoy. And I think the world kind of stopped there for about 30 minutes to an hour on Sunday evening to watch that playoff.
I mean, just what a roller coaster ride of taking a big lead, losing the lead, going back and taking the lead again, having, making that great shot on 15, where, he just took a complete risk at it, and it ended up being rewarded with a very makeable eagle putt that he doesn't then make. So he only makes birdie. And then the drama on 17, where he misses a putt that looked like it was not a gimme, but certainly very, very makeable. And then hits that bad second shot on 18. It has to get up and in from there and into just to get to the playoff. And then what a shot on the playoff. And just the roller coaster of emotions for that whole day was crazy.
Well, if he doesn't win it, then this is always remembered as an ultimate choke job by him.
Absolutely. No question.
So amazing how it turned around for him so quick. And he knew that. Like he could feel the pressure getting to him there in those last holes. To win it in a playoff like he did had to just be an incredible moment, because right before that, he's feeling the lowest of lows.
I'll be honest, him sinking to his knees and crying the way he did, I think that was more just to your point, the relief of the moment of just all the pressure-packed moments he went through in that final round.
One of the more over-the-top celebrations that felt totally genuine.
Yeah,
he didn't feel like he was playing into it at all.
No, that's right. That's a great way to say it, because that's what I thought too. I'm like, that kind of took me aback. Like, wow, this really hit him in so many different ways. Like all that pressure just blew out of him in one moment.
Yeah. How about that? Starting off a little golf talk. So
there we go.
The golf boys here. Let's get into some NFL draft, Skinny, because I think sometimes we make the mistake of talking about the draft, doing our big draft preview the day before the day the draft starts. And a lot of people listen to this podcast maybe throughout the weekend or on Monday or what have you. And so it kind of loses its shelf life there. Obviously, one of the big storylines going into this draft is the defensive overhaul. We've talked a little bit about that last week. I love the stat that Paul Dehner threw out there. I'm sure others of you have cited it, but since 2019, the Bengals have drafted 12 defensive linemen without a single one reaching 10 sacks. Do you lean towards their struggles to draft pass rushers? Do you lean towards that being them just bad scouting, missing on all those guys? Do you think they've had issues with player development, or do you think maybe it was more scheme related and something that Lou Anarumo did?
I think that's what we're going to find out, right? Is Al Golden and Jerry Montgomery, the new defensive line coach, are they able to get more out of Miles Murphy than Marion Hobby, the defensive line coach, and Lou Anarumo? I think this is the litmus test to find out if that's the case. I don't think it is. I think they draft sometimes more traits than they do production. I mean, Miles Murphy was a good player at Clemson, just from a production standpoint, but not a great player. Go back and look at some of his – they're not over the top great, but he has some traits, athletic traits they like. Joseph Osai had athletic traits they like. So is it too much basing it on, let's go for the traits over the production? And maybe that's where you have to, as a scouting department, go, maybe we need to look more at the production than the traits.
So I feel like pass rusher is such a premium position. You have to be able to throw the ball downfield. You have to have a quarterback who can make plays downfield. And then on defense, you have to have someone that can limit the other team's ability to do that by putting pressure on the quarterback, creating turnovers in that way. But with the Bengals' struggles to develop and draft pass rushers. Should I be hesitant to say they should go pass rusher here in with the first pick?
I think they can go in so many different directions with that first pick. And again, I don't want to totally go best player on the board, but they can have, their board, have it just fall to them because they still need a plug and play guard. And maybe they think they can get that in free agency. And we talked a little bit last week. They do like the guys on the roster. They like Jackson Kirkland, who missed all last year with an injury. They think they can get more with a new offensive line coach with Cordell Volson. They brought back Cody Ford. And so, if a top guard falls to them in that first round, I wouldn't put it past them. I don't think they'd pass on an edge over that, to be honest with you, or even a safety. So that would be in play. I mean, to me, it could just go so many different ways. I mean, really, I don't think you're set at defensive tackle either, even though you're kind of, too deep there because you got Slayton that they signed in free agency and McKinley Jackson back and Chris Jenkins back and BJ Hill back. That's 4 right there, but none of them are really a potent pass rusher. I guess BJ Hill, if he can get some snaps off of him, can give you a little more pass rush juice, but they need an interior tackle that gives you some pass rush juice. They could go in that direction if one falls to them. So I know it's a cop-out to say that, but I do think it can go in just so many different ways depending on, okay, there's the best safety on the board. He's our best guy on the board at the moment. Let's go.
No, I totally agree. And I don't mean to say I think they're definitely going pass rusher. I guess my point was I'm excited about the idea of a pass rusher. I think it's something that they need. Obviously, you have the whole Trey Hendrickson deal playing out. And I just think it's really important in the NFL. Like, if you're going to choose one position to upgrade, regardless of what your current roster is, pass rusher is probably one of the top 2 or 3 positions that I would always be looking at. So from that perspective, I get excited about that idea. But I almost wonder, like, should I even be excited about the Bengals drafting another pass rusher? And also, when you look at some of the pass rushers that they're being associated with right now, like a guy like Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall, who's been dropping, or even, and I don't know if this one's realistic, but a guy like James Pierce, who's been slipping in drafts, the outstanding edge rusher from Tennessee. Both of those guys have some character issues, some off the field type, at least alleged issues that have been thrown their way that are maybe causing them to slip. So I just wonder, like, should I maybe not be as excited about the pass rushers, at least the ones that the Bengals are being associated with right now?
It's a fair point. I mean, one guy that I was talking about traits over productivity, Shamar Stewart's a first round grade from a lot of places who could fall to the Bengals. And I think he only had 1.5 sacks last year at Texas A&M, but he's got such athletic traits that people are rating him as a first round guy. Is that a guy that you take and then you hold your breath of, or taking traits over production? I don't know about not getting excited part of it. I think this is the litmus test. If we're going to find out, was this scheme, was this coaching, and will the new coaches and new scheme help Miles Murphy, Joseph Osai, and whoever the guy is they draft as an edge? Because I don't think they go, I'll be honest, I don't think they go outside of the first 2 rounds without getting an edge. I don't.
Yeah, it feels that way to me too. And, James Pierce seems like, from a physical standpoint, a production standpoint, he seems like the guy I'd love to have. He matches, at least analytically, the type of profile that's done really well in the NFL. Mike Green, I'm a little more cool on. I could be talked into it or out of it. But my big concern there is it feels like, we just saw the Burton situation play out last year where the Bengals were being smarter than everyone else and taking the guy with some baggage to get that insane value, allegedly. I don't know if this is the draft that they can afford to do that. I don't want them to outsmart people. I don't want them to be reaching for value with a guy who has great traits and not the production, or a guy who does have the production and the traits, but maybe character issues that could be holding him back. I want them to get a guy that they are very certain is going to contribute right away. And if they can't find that guy at pass rusher, then I think I'm okay with them going in another direction.
Yeah, like I said, and there's a bunch of directions you can go. That's for sure. The board is pretty wide open.
One more question about the pass rusher thing. If they do draft an edge, does that signify to you that they're more likely to trade Trey Hendrickson, or do you think that's just they need depth at that position regardless?
Yeah, they need depth at that position. Joseph Osai did play well down the stretch. I think probably put himself in the starter mix. They do want to play Miles Murphy snaps. That's a given. They want to see what they've got in the guy. But let's just say Joseph Osai is meh, like he's been for most of his career, and Miles Murphy is just a dud that they never could get anything out of. You better have somebody else in the pipeline, because if you don't extend Trey Hendrickson, there's always the possibility of the holdout. There's always the possibility that he doesn't play. I don't believe that. We talked about that last week. I don't believe that will take place. But then there's also the possibility that he's gone after this year, and you better start having the pipeline refilled, and this is a place to refill it.
You've mentioned a few times that there are different ways that the Bengals could go with this pick. How open do you think they feel like it is? Do you think they are in best player available mode?
I do. I honestly do, because, like I said, you have a bunch of needs at different position groups, and I just think you let the board fall to you, and whatever the best guy on your board at one of those position groups is, have a way, because there's plenty of them.
You've been doing the mock drafts. We talked a little bit about it last week. What names are you liking? Are there any out there, as you've been sifting through these names, that really jump out to you? Not necessarily a certain position, but actual guys.
Every mock I've done, I keep falling. Michael Williams from Georgia keeps falling to that spot. He's an edge rusher, and I've taken him each time. The one time I did, and I wanted to go a different route, I think I mentioned last week, I took Nick Emenwari, the safety out of South Carolina, then took an edge rusher in the second round. And that's what I go back to. I think in those first, let's just go, by the time day 2 is over, you're going to have 3 of the following 4 positions drafted, in my opinion: edge, safety, guard, linebacker.
Edge, safety, guard, linebacker. I like Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss. Do you think that's a possibility, or probably not?
Yeah, no, it is. And some of my colleagues have talked about in some of their mocks having taken him. I know you need interior pass rush. I think it's more important now than ever, because people spend so much time trying to block the great edges. But like I said, you're already you're on the depth chart right now. You're too deep at your 2 tackle spots. Do you really need another one that early when you have other immediate needs?
It's a good point, but man, I think you did miss DJ Reader, and I think this is the type of guy who's good against the run. He's got the physical tools. I think he's an upgrade at that position, not just from a pass rush standpoint, but from a really clogging and anchoring the middle of that line.
Man, but here's the thing. So you've re-signed BJ Hill, you signed a free agent, and again, the free agent you signed, TJ Slayton, is just pretty much a run stopper. I mean, he has all of 2 career sacks in 4 years, but he is a run stopper. And then you spent a 2nd-round pick last year on Chris Jenkins, a 3rd-round pick last year on McKinley Jackson, and you're going back to that well. I'm not telling you you're wrong, Rick, because I don't want to say that's the thing they're not going to do, because I think it is in play.
It's a lot of resources spent at that position.
Yes, exactly.
No, I agree with you there, and that's why I wanted to bring him up, because I could easily see the mentality with the Bengals being like, we cannot put more resources into a defensive tackle. But when I look at the board and I see a name like him pop up, I'm like, man, that seems like it would be an exciting get for them. Jihad Campbell was another one I've seen out there, the linebacker from Alabama a lot. Any thoughts on him at all?
Yeah, that's an interesting one for many reasons. I heard a draft guy on ESPN 1530 yesterday from The Athletic talk about how he kind of has Micah Parsons traits to him, that, he could flip out and be a pass rusher. And boy, you think of the versatility of that. Like he said, he can kind of create his own position. And I'm thinking that is a great get. I don't know if he'll be there. I really don't. But yeah, he absolutely would be somebody that should be in play.
I believe the guy's name was Renard Wilson. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that the hybrid linebacker defensive end that they kept bouncing back? They can never figure. I know that's like a thing that everyone talks about now as Micah Parsons, but whenever I hear that, I think of Renard Wilson.
That's a great point. And I mean, they tried to fit a round peg into a square hole for sure. I mean, it never worked. They couldn't decide, is he a 3-4 stand-up linebacker or is he a 4-3 hand in the dirt end? And they could never get it right.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe this is a silly thing to do, but can we do like odds on what position they will take if you had to handicap them? Like if it's what's the most likely position?
Yeah, I'd go 70% edge, 20% safety, 10% guard, because I don't know if the right guard falls there, and then you wait until the 2nd or 3rd round to address that spot.
Fair enough. And then go ahead.
And the other part to guard is, and even Zach Taylor mentioned this at the owners' meetings. I was not there, but reading what he talked about was that if they don't find what they want at the guard, because guard came up of what's your answer at guard at the moment other than what you got on your roster, and he talked about if it doesn't work out in the draft. And I think for them it has to be literally they've graded this guy as a plug and play starter at guard. I think that's the only way you take one, honestly, before day 2's over with. I agree with that. I didn't get them to guard in most of my mocks till the 5th round. Which is probably 4th or 5th round. That's probably too late in my opinion. Unless, again, then you circle back after the draft and go get a veteran. There's a couple of them out there. The one name that surfaces a lot is Brandon Scherf, and I don't know how much they believe in him, or they probably would have signed him already. So I do think they have a plan B. I hope they have a plan B for sure. I don't think it can be, we just think Jackson Kirkland, Cody Ford, Cordell Volson are going to be our 2 starting guards on opening day. I just don't see maybe one of those guys being a starting guard, but not both.
I weirdly get the sense that we're going to have to figure out what plan B is, because it just doesn't seem like it's heading that direction. Like they're going to draft an offensive lineman early. Just make a final prediction. What are you going to do? You're going to stick with what you've been doing in the mock drafts?
Yeah, I mean, again, if Michael Williams is there, I would take him. I know the people now are starting to question him and worry, is he just a box safety and not a great, open field safety? I don't know. I mean, I think everybody starts to nitpick at this point in the draft at what guys can't do. Tell me what the tape showed, and let's go from there. I'll go with you, the best edge or best safety on the board.
Do you think there's any chance that they'll be looking at skill positions in the first 2 or 3 rounds?
I don't. So I'm doing positional ones right now, and it's funny. I did quarterback, which we all know the answer to there is they're not going to draft a quarterback, but I try to do it and look at other names in the draft just so people can have some names to look at. I did running back, and I do think that they will go to that on day 3 at some point, probably more of a speed back. And there's a lot of guys that are 5th, 6th round grades that actually were really productive college players. I did wide receiver yesterday, and part of what I put is Brown Bengals are most likely to take one. There's a lot of 3rd to 5th round guys. I mean, there's some guys that have 5th round grades that are absolute 4.3 burners that, that you can, hopefully plug and play and can be a more dynamic option than Andre Yoshivas. Listen, having T. Higgins and Jamar Chase is a good place to start, but Yoshi's a nice guy to have as a depth piece on your roster. I don't want that to be, misconstrued, but he's not very dynamic. I mean, he just isn't.
Right.
And can you get some? That's what they wanted. Listen, that's what they wanted either Charlie Jones or Jermaine Burton to be, is a dynamic field stretcher, home run potential guy as that 3rd option. Well, Charlie Jones can't get healthy and can't get on the field, and Jermaine Burton to this point has been a turd. So I think they have to go back to the well one more time, and sometime in that 3rd to 5th round. I'm doing tight end today. In fact, I just finished it and it hasn't been posted yet, I don't believe. I think I saw a mock where somebody had Tyler Warren falling to the Bengals and taking him. And I even mentioned in my thing that if he was there, it would be awful tempting because he's such a dynamic player at that position. But listen, you re-sign Mike Gesicki to a 3-year extension. You have Drew Sample under contract. You re-sign Tanner Hudson to extension. You re-sign Cam Grandy, who played some games last season. Eric All, I don't know when he's going to be back, but eventually he will be back at some point. Maybe not fully healthy the way we hope he will be. But your tight end room's too deep to even waste a pick on a tight end in this draft.
The one thing about Jermaine Burton that I don't understand is how is he possibly going to get better at football when he's constantly looking for a new apartment? You know how much it sucks to be apartment hunting in this current market?
No question.
I mean, the dude's just doing it like every other month. He's getting evicted and looking for a new place to live.
How about you just in the apartment you go to, you do the things you're supposed to do, like pay your rent and keep your place clean?
Well, let's not get logical here, Skinny. All right, let's move on to the Reds. They are 4-2 since we last talked. Sweeping the Pirates in 3 games and then they're 4-1, right? Yeah, they swept the Pirates and then they went 1-1 against the Mariners here to start.
Well, that's right. They were off last Thursday, weren't they?
Yeah.
We did the podcast after they lost the 3rd game to the Giants. You're right.
Yeah, sorry about that. So they're 4-1 since we last talked. 1-1 in the current series against the Mariners. They swept the Pirates. They are now sitting at 500 overall, 9-9, 3rd in the NL Central, a game and a half behind the first place Cubs. We had mentioned last week, showed a little bit of life there when they were in San Francisco, and hopefully they could parlay that into something. And now they have. They've got themselves back into the picture here a bit. You need your best players to play well, Skinny, and through this little stretch here that we're talking about, the Reds' best players came through. I mean, obviously you start with the pitching staff, but then you also had Ellie hitting the grand slam and making a few other big plays. I think that's what it's going to take for this team most of the year. It's the pitching being really good, and then you get Ellie De La Cruz and McClain and a few of these other guys to have their big moments. I think the impressive part about this was they had some pressure on them, and the fans were starting to get restless. They were looking to be like what everyone was afraid they were going to be in the preseason, and they found a way to turn that around. That feels like a pretty good sign.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't hurt that you played the Pirates, but hey, you know what? Take advantage of that. And I think they play mostly teams with losing record over the next few weeks, so a chance to maybe fatten up a little bit here. Maybe Austin Hayes does provide that jolt in the lineup. He sure has done some things early since coming back, and maybe he was a big missing link to it. But I got to be honest, how long is the leash on Jamer Candelario? And it's going to get longer now that CES has gone on the DL today. But I mean, how much longer can you ride that bat out in the lineup? I'm not sure you can.
That's what I was just going to ask you. Who is the biggest issue for this team right now that's holding them back the most? And what would you do with them? Is it CES, Steer, or Candelario right now?
Well, I mean, CES is a moot point at the moment because he's on the DL, and he did have a 2-run double yesterday. Although that was the only
But that's a
game.
concern too, that he's
Correct.
on the
No,
DL. I
no,
mean,
no question. Absolutely. I think Candelario,
because you're paying him.
because you're paying him. That's a big part of it. He supposedly had a good winter. I think if I remember, he was sending like the coaches and staff tapes of how well he was hitting the ball, and felt like he'd kind of turned a corner, and he hasn't. I mean, and that's the problem here. He's on the other side of 30, and can you have bounce back years in there? Sure, but a lot of times when you get the other side of 30 and things start going sideways, they don't get much better. And can it get much better than being on the interstate? Yeah, I would hope so, but I just don't know.
For a team with the payroll that the Reds have, having guys like him and Moustakas back to back are just
Right.
tough. Those are bad swings and misses.
What can you do with him? I guess you don't have to play him as much, but I'm not getting rid of him because I'm paying him, or do you just say, hey, you know what? We've already paid this money anyway, or paying this money anyway. What's the difference between paying him for not producing and paying him for not playing with us?
I know fans get angry and they want to cut guys just out of spite, but
Yes.
I don't think this one makes any sense to cut because, one, we've seen the depth that the Reds have. They don't have someone else that they're going to bring up that's going to take that roster spot and give them a bunch more production or a bunch more upside sitting on the bench. So I think you can't really play him every day. That's obvious. I think you sit him on the bench and you use him as a veteran bat to use in pinch hit situations, and if someone gets injured, and you hope at some point with just maybe some extended time off, maybe he can work on getting himself into better shape or something like that during this time, do whatever he can to get himself as right as possible and be as fresh as possible. Maybe he finds a hot streak at some point that'll help you if you are in a race later this summer, because right now it feels like he's completely worthless.
Yeah, no, I mean,
And same thing with Steer, quite honestly, being injured. He feels worthless too right now. He can't field because of his injury, and he's non-existent as a hitter.
yeah, I mean, lump Jake Fraley into that mold as well. There's a bunch of them at the moment.
How sustainable do you think this pitching is? Because the pitching has been outrageously good to start the season. They are third best ERA in the MLB at 293, third worst, the best WHIP, walks and hits per innings pitched. But the problem is the other side, you have the third worst batting average in MLB at 204. So how sustainable is the pitching, do you think?
I think it's very sustainable. Now, listen, will Hunter Green give up a run at some point? He sure will.
Yeah.
But I do think it's sustainable. I think that's the one thing. I did my radio hit on WLW on Friday, and we kind of talked about this as well, is the upside is I think this is sustainable with the starting pitching. And you've got depth in the minor leagues if guys start to get hurt. I mean, listen, Carson Spires isn't an awful pitcher. He's back in the minors because he's the sixth guy at the moment once Andrew Abbott came back. The one that's a little frustrating at the moment is Nick Martinez, who can't seem to get out of the through the fifth inning without being unscathed.
Also, is Alexis Diaz just done too?
Ooh, that's a great question, man.
Is he just cooked?
That was a rough outing.
Well, and I heard when he was down in Louisville, he couldn't throw a strike either.
No, correct.
So it's like he couldn't throw a strike in his rehab. He comes back up. He starts struggling with control. He's coming into the sixth inning now. He used to be your closer. Is this guy just doesn't have it anymore?
I will give Terry Francona this. I think that's a good place to try him out at the moment. Just get him in there in low leverage situations and see if he's still got it. But I mean, we've seen this happen to a handful of pitchers before where all of a sudden they don't feel their stuff is good enough and they just start nibbling away and never can throw strikes again.
The good news, I guess, aside from the fact that they've won some games here, is McLean is back. Yeah. And so, I mean, really, with the pitching staff you have, and Ellie De La Cruz, and hopefully Matt McLean continuing to play well, Jose Trevino's been fun at catcher so far. He's been hitting well. It feels like this team has just enough maybe to keep this thing fun like they have through the last week. I don't think it's going to be like they're going to take off and be in first place or anything, but I do think they may have enough there if this pitching continues to stay at this level. I mean, really, they have to be about best in the major leagues to keep it at this level, but if they can do that, then I think this team can maybe tread water and be in the hunt for most of the summer. Yeah,
and as we do this podcast, everybody in the NL Central has 8 losses. Now the Cubs have 12 wins. They're in first place. They played those 2 games over in they played 2 extra games, actually 3 extra games than the Reds. Reds have 9 wins. They have 12. And they just put Justin Steele on the IL. So they lose a top-notch starting pitcher. And so that's where I don't think anybody runs away and hides in this division either.
That's another good point we talked about that before the year started. It just felt like one of those years where no one looks too good and no one looks like they're going to run away with it. So again, I'm very concerned about the offense. I don't see a lot of
No,
upside
that's
there,
fair.
but
I'm with you. I think it's very concerning. I
you
think
have just enough big play guys though to make it fun with Elliott and McLean, and hopefully like at some point maybe CES will get healthy and get going, or one of these outfielders will figure it out and get going again. Maybe Friedel will get hot at some point. It's a fun team to watch when they are going right, and the pitching is just so outrageously good right now that it could still be a decent summer.
no question.
All right, let's move on to a little transfer portal talk with college basketball. Xavier had a massive weekend this past week as they added 3 transfers on Saturday. All 3 they expect to be impact guys. They added Trey Carroll, a 6'7" forward from Florida Atlantic, who averaged 12 points and 5 rebounds in 22 minutes per game. Gabriel Posado, a 6'7" wing forward hybrid guy from Evansville, averaged 15 points and 4 rebounds a game last year as a freshman. And then Malik Moore, a 6'5" wing from Montana, who averaged just shy of 13 points and over 3 rebounds in 30 minutes a game. He shot just shy of 41% from beyond the arc. Then Cincinnati added a 6'8", 260-pound center from George Mason in Jalen Haynes. He averaged 14 points and 7 rebounds.
I like him
last season. Well, let's start with Haynes with Cincinnati, and then we can talk about the Xavier guys. Haynes is interesting to me, Skinny, because this feels like the exact opposite of the types of bigs Wes has had for the most part, aside from maybe Jameel Reynolds, who he didn't use very often.
Right.
And it seems to be very different from his playing style right now, which was athletic, trying to be up tempo, and Haynes is a big body. He's a slow plotter for the most part. I don't know that he's like an up and down sprinting the floor type of guy with a lot of athleticism. So how do you think he's going to fit into Wes Miller's system, or do you think this signifies maybe a shift there?
Maybe a shift there. I will say this. I mean, I think you'll see a ton of 3-guard lineup, right? With probably Creasa, Jizzle, Day, and then this guy is a big, and then Sean Abayev. Yeah, and that, this guy provides the brawn. He's obviously not very tall, but he does battle on the glass, man. George Mason really went to war. I watched them during their conference tournament. They just battle on the glass, and he's one of those guys. I like. It's a good get for them. The problem is you still need to fill a roster. I mean, and time is growing short. We got 4 days left.
Well, 4 days for guys to enter. And guys can continue to commit. I mean, we're going to go another month and a half, 2 months with this thing because there's so many names still in the portal that are uncommitted. But the pickings are getting slim, and I'm not sure that there was ever that much talent in the portal to begin with. It's just so much different this year from years past where you've had all these guys.
You had all those COVID year guys.
Exactly. Think even like a guy like Marquez Warwick, who was as loyal as it gets, played a full 4-year career, led NKU in scoring, and then had this extra year of like, okay, I've graduated, I've gotten the school scoring record, I'm going to cash in for 1 year and go play my final year somewhere else. Teams had been loading up with guys like that as almost bargain guys the last few years. There were so many of them available with 4 or 5 years of college basketball experience already. That's just not out there anymore. Or if it is, they're not nearly the type of skill and talent that were available the past few seasons. So teams are way overpaying for guys who aren't nearly as good as they've found in the portal the last few seasons. And it's going to be interesting to see how this year plays out from that perspective. But as you mentioned, getting Jalen Haynes is Cincinnati definitely needed help in the post. There's no question about that. And hopefully he can give them a little bit more offensive firepower.
Well, I think he's far more well-rounded than either Jameel Reynolds or Aziz Bendago. I mean, he can play both ends of the floor. That's something neither one of those guys could do. They could really literally play one end of the floor. Jameel on offense, and he wasn't all that great there, and Aziz on defense.
Right, exactly. The 3 guys for Xavier, I mean, this is in a lot of ways, I think, going to dictate how their season goes.
Let me ask you this, and I don't mean to poo-poo it because all 3 of the guys, and let's put all right in that category as well. All those guys did well at the schools they were at, but can you win in the Big East with a Valpo transfer, a Montana transfer, and I've drawn a blank on the other.
Florida Atlantic was where Trey Carroll's from. Posada is from Evansville.
Yeah.
So I hear that. I get that. I think it's valid, but I'd also ask you, Skinny, like, where else are all the star players coming from these days?
I understand.
Every team's just got a bunch of transfers from lower levels for the most part. I mean, you get a couple guys from high majors, but
I'm not knocking it. I'm just wondering, can you win at the? And I guess that's what we're going to find out. I don't mind those ascending players who have gone somewhere else and proven it, and all 3 of those guys kind of did in their own way, right?
Yeah.
But it worries me if I'm a Xavier fan that it feels like. I don't want to say you're getting the scraps because again, these guys all did good things at the school. It wasn't like they averaged 3 points and 2 assists or 5 points and 2 rebounds. I mean, they did some things at those schools. It's just can you win in the Big East with those players?
Well, I mean, what did Xavier have last year?
Well, legit.
I mean, it was a guy from the Conference USA. You know, I mean, like it's been like Soleil Boom, same thing. Like they've basically been mining the mid-major ranks for most of their roster the last few years. And a lot of the teams at the high major rank. 3 years ago, I had a lot more questions about how guys would be able to make the jump from mid-major to high major. In today's basketball, I mean, that's kind of the way it works. It's more like a minor league system. You play your way up and then you get to the high major level. And if you can play, you can play. They're all going to be there. Now, as for how good Xavier's team is going to be, that's a legit question, Skinny. They had to turn over an entire roster.
Right.
These are the guys that are basically going to decide it. They're relying on these three to clearly they had to cost something. They had to cost a pretty good chunk. I think Xavier's about done with their spending now. So when you look at the roster, these appear to be a couple of the more talented pieces, guys you would expect to start for them. So I think two guys that I'm really looking at is Pizzotto from Evansville and then the big kid Anthony Robinson from Virginia that they got to transfer over. It feels like they're really counting on those two to make a big jump and be big focal points of this year's team. I think they spent a lot of money on those two.
And that's the interesting part is the three guys from the mid-majors all were productive. Robinson's numbers don't look all that productive, right? But he did play at a high level in the ACC. So I don't want to sound like I'm coming off as bashing this. I'm just, no. I think it's fair to question how's this going to work.
I think it's 100% fair, but that's the thing now. Everyone's going through that same thing. When you're turning off over so much of your roster and you've got so many moving pieces, we just don't know from year to year what most of these teams are going to look like. I mean, look at Xavier last year. It's like we thought that offense was going to be great before the season. They get into the season, they can't score at all. They end up kind of becoming the team we thought they might by the end of the year, but it was more defensive led than it was offensive led. And, you know, last offseason, we were talking about how great they were going to be from an offensive firepower standpoint. So it's tough to predict these things in the transfer portal era.
Yeah, from a high school recruiting standpoint from last year, Sean had the 2 commitments and obviously the one that decommitted. Did he stop at that number because he was going to build the rest through the portal, and maybe your coach is going to have to rethink, I need maybe a couple of more high school players than what I was thinking about. I can get a good chunk out of the portal, and we're going to have to live through the portal, but maybe mine the high school ranks a little more.
Well, I think everyone would like to ideally have a balance of guys that they recruit themselves and develop and are able to hopefully keep in their program that don't transfer out. But there's no doubt about it. I mean, Skinny, I can tell you right now, this time of year for me, I spend a lot of time, especially on the weekends, on the phone talking about high school prospects and AAU tournaments. I haven't spent one single second on the phone talking about high school prospects yet this spring. Not one. I haven't gotten one call from anyone, not an AAU coach, not an agent, not a college coach. And usually that's like all I do this time of year, at least going back a few seasons. So it's totally changed in that regard. They just don't care as much until they get their transfer portal situation figured out. Then they start to look to fill in the gaps there and maybe look for high upside guys that are in the 2026, 2027 classes that they can add. Richard Pitino said the day that he was introduced as head coach, when he talked to us beforehand, a couple media members, he said, I'm not expecting any high school guys this year. We've got to get this roster together, get it to be competitive for next year in the Big East. And then going forward, we'll recruit the type of high school guys we think we can recruit to Xavier. But yeah, I mean, that's not going to be a part of their plans this year at all.
Yeah, that's what I was just curious if that's the number, like Sean only wanted to settle at that number of high school guys because he felt the rest would be portal guys, or he'd build it through the portal, or how that worked out last year.
Yeah, I think Sean had really gone in a different direction, and partly because we saw why. I think Sean always had plans of, this ain't it at Xavier. I'm going to make a jump somewhere else. So I'm going to make sure it's a 1-year deal every year here and go all in with that with experienced older players. But I also think to some extent he and other coaches feel that's the best way to win now. It's year to year. You can't guarantee anyone's going to come back even if they have eligibility left. So why not just get as old and experienced and as tough as possible? I think there's something to be said for that strategy. But I think there's a reason you've seen other teams try to get a better blend, because there is something for continuity and having guys that believe in your system and having guys that appreciate your university and are playing for a little bit more than just what their payment is going to be at their next school. So there's all of that goes into it. And I think, again, the goal is to get a blend. It's to have a core in place that are part of your system and your program and believe in what you do. And then you can always add that guy or two to put you over the top, hopefully.
Yeah, no doubt. I did see Cameron Fletcher found a home. He's going to High Point, correct?
Yep. And then UC has the more interesting ones, though, like Dan Skilling's going to Baylor. How do you think that's going to work out with UC fans?
That matchup will be fascinating next year.
It really will, because I can see that going either way. I always believed Dan Skilling's had a lot of potential. It's clear that he has not lived up to that potential after this season, and he really fell off this year. So the question is, do you put that on Wes Miller? Do you put that on Dan Skilling's isn't the prospect we thought he was?
I think for a lot of those guys, Reed, Betsy, him, Rayvon, I mean, if they go to the new places and thrive, I mean, that is an indictment on him. I mean, it just is.
Yeah, it is. And I think Dan is going to be the one that I'm most curious to see, because he feels like the one, and especially going to Baylor, being in the conference still, if he does turn it around, that is going to tear UC fans up, and it also will make them sour even more on Wes Miller.
No question. Yeah, no question. That one was certainly interesting for sure.
Yep. At Kentucky, we talked about them last time we talked transfer portal, doing pretty well, but it seems like they're struggling a little bit right now. Haven't added any new names, missed on a few of their top targets recently that chose other schools. So
yeah, I think whoever that player is, I mean, you're coming into a pretty loaded team at the moment. I mean, I'm sure that whoever it's going to be, it's not going to be somebody of huge stature just because you don't know where the minutes are going. I mean, I'll take always a dude. He's going to get a bunch of. Jasper Johnson is a dude. I know he's a freshman, but he can play.
I think some of the UK fans are missing that a little bit of like, there's not as much opportunity or role or money maybe as you might think.
Yeah, no, I mean, and Brandon Garrison came back. And so, I mean, I was doing the roster the other day. I'm like, man, I know he's going to get somebody, and it's probably going to be a very specialized player who's a shooter, I'm going to assume. And, that guy's going to also look at the roster and go, wait a minute, I want to come here and you're going to pay me, but where am I going to play? How am I think it's a kind of a catch-22. I think he's done a great job of putting this roster together. He does have an open spot or two left, if you will. And I think he can be picky, but I also think whoever those players are can be picky as well, just because they can look and go, wait a minute, that guy's going to get his minutes, and he's going to get his minutes, he's going to get his minutes, and he's going to get his minutes. I mean, I don't know, maybe Travis Perry and Trent Noah take steps forward to get more minutes. Colin Chandler played pretty well the more, and again, he was off of a 2-year Mormon mission. And it took him a while to kind of get back in the flow. And I think as the season went along, he started to show some things too. So yeah, I wouldn't fret it if I'm a Kentucky fan at the moment. I really wouldn't. I mean, he's going to get somebody. He's proven he's done that in the past. But that player is going to be interesting because again, there's not a lot of minutes to go around anymore.
Yep. All right, let's get into some Ask Skinny Anything.
Let's do it.
Which sport has the best draft, Skinny?
I'll go the NFL. I mean, nobody pays attention to the baseball draft. I mean, you may pay attention to the first round guy for your team, but I'm not grinding out the many of the rounds after that. And neither's anybody else. There's not a plethora of info on it. I know MLB Network's televised some of it, the last few years. I just don't see it. The NBA draft, it goes so long on that. I fall asleep on it. Does anybody really care about the second round?
Hold on. It goes so long. The NFL draft is 3 days, my man. What do you mean the NBA goes too long?
The NBA goes like 1 o'clock in the morning. I ain't staying up to see who the 62nd pick is in the draft.
For one night, not 3.
Yeah, I don't know. The NBA draft doesn't do much for me. It really, maybe because we don't have a team here.
Yeah.
I don't have really, I used to be a Pacer fan when I was a kid. I kind of fallen out of that, I guess, if you will, only because I could listen to their games on the radio as a kid and had some players I liked, would go to a couple of games. Maybe that's the fact. But the NFL, it's just so marketed. It's just, listen, trust me, from a work standpoint, it's a freaking grind, but I still think it's the best draft.
Yeah, the NFL draft is clearly the biggest deal, but I would argue the NBA draft is the better draft, the more fun draft, because we actually find out more about teams. Like if the NBA draft adds a top 5, top 10 pick, you know a lot about what their team, or you at least have very strong opinions about what their team is going to be next year as a result of that. In the NFL, you just have so many players. It's like one draft pick, even if it's a top 5 pick, really might not matter that much.
No, that's fair. That's a fair point. Though one thing also about the NBA draft that bothers me, it feels like half the guys get traded to a new team as soon as they get picked. It's like, wait a minute, I thought he was with that team. No,
that is annoying. Yeah, that I do hate, and they do a terrible job of displaying it and representing how it's gone. Like it's always confusing about which team they're actually on now.
Correct.
Yeah. Who does Skinny think is the Bengals' best draft pick over the last 3 years? Not necessarily the best player, but the best value for where he was picked.
That's a good one. I have to go back I'm doing this in my head. Last year was the Mims draft. Man, oh man, oh man. I'm trying to do these off the top of my head from a value perspective. Gosh almighty. I may have to circle back on that one because I'm drawing a blank of some of the mid-round picks. Turner. Jordan Battle may turn out to be that as a third rounder because I think he's cemented himself as a starter. I think there's some upside there. I'll go him off the top of my head.
All right. Outside of sports, what do you enjoy going to?
There's not much outside of sports. I mean, I cover it, I coach it, and I watch it. I don't binge watch many TV shows. The Righteous Gemstones is back on, so we started watching that again. I mean, my hobbies. If I have a hobby, it's a sports one. It's golf. I like to bet the horses. That's sports. So outside of sports, I'm a pretty dull person, I suppose.
Fair enough. I was wondering what the answer to that question was going to be as I started going through it in my head. If you were forced to eat at one local media room for all of your meals, which one would you choose?
Ooh. I got to go, and I know it gets a bad grade from the players. The Bengals cafeteria on draft weekend. That's the only time we're allowed to eat in there, and I find the food good. I like a good salad bar. It's freshly prepared. They do burgers on Saturday, and I mean they are off the charts awesome with the big fries. I'm going the Bengals.
Well, and you guys also have like game day press box food on, so I would include that as part of like the meal you would eat.
That's one that's not going to go in the record books. I do like the bacon.
No, I agree, but
I like the bacon on Sunday.
You eat the crispy bacon. Do you eat the Skyline when they bring it out at lunch?
No, because I've already eaten. I can't stuff Skyline after I've just stuffed myself with brunch at like
breakfast.
11 a.m. It's always felt weird to me. Like they're so tight back to back. It's like God, I can't do that anymore.
Well, I think the idea is maybe you skip the breakfast if you're going to do the Skyline.
Yeah,
at least that's how I did it.
That's a good. I know people that double up though. I can't
look. There are some animals working amongst us in the local media. Let's not go there.
And listen, man, don't try. I don't shy away on the bacon on that day either. So I'm not trying to.
No, I'm not shaming anybody for their eating habits. Yeah. Lord knows. Yeah. And then finally, what is Skinny's favorite type of chip? Which actually, I have a good anecdote for this.
Potato chip or just chip in general?
It just says chip.
I'm going Ruffles, man. I occasionally we get the wavy lays, and I every time they don't taste. I know you think they're the same. They don't taste. Ruffles have a distinctive taste. It's just the right amount of salt in my opinion.
Yeah, you like the Ruffles with the ridges and the chip dip, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can do Pringles too. It just the thing with Pringles, and I feel weird about this. It's like you open the tube and you take the stack that you think is just the right amount stack, and then you go through that stack. You're like, I'm going to go back for more. Before you know it, half the tube's gone.
Once you pop, you can't stop. I mean, they really want it with that marketing slogan. It's just indoctrinated all of us. I have found the best tortilla chip on the market, a new one.
Okay.
And the great thing is easily accessible and cheap. But I'm a big tortilla chip guy, and I like to, anytime I see new ones, I'll just like, all right, give it a try. On the Border has been my go-to for years. I am now switching to Kroger's kettle cooked tortilla chips.
You know what? My daughter has those, and I haven't tried them.
They're not the potato chip because they've always done the potato chip kettle cooked. These are the tortilla chips that are also kettle cooked. They're like crispier and also a little more thick with good integrity for dips. So
I'm a weird one with this too. Like Saturday with golf on or a game on or whatever. I'm not a big snack. I'm really not a big snack food guy, but it's a good Saturday. I can go through some chips and dip, and so that's not a bad call right there.
That's my go-to. Tortilla chips and guac is kind of like my kryptonite when it comes to snacking. So I'm a big tortilla chip guy. I'm telling you, try the kettle-cooked tortilla chips from Kroger. Not an ad. It's just they're the best.
Now, back to that draft question. I mean, I guess as a sixth-round pick, Yoshivas is a pretty good value. I mean, he's become the number 3. I think they need more dynamic player than him at that position. But for a sixth-round pick, that's pretty good.
That's a guy that usually gets cut.
Right. No, right.
Yeah. All right, that's all we got.
Right. I appreciate it as always. We'll be back next week. We'll probably do this a day before the draft on Wednesday, preview the draft a little bit more, but we want to get into some draft preview stuff today. Of course, some more Reds and much, much more. For Rick Broering, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition, presented by Jake, the Attorney Maislin.